we are sitting in one of your amazing daycare centers. Tell me how Klay was born, and secondly, tell me what what the financial decisions were involved around bringing something like Klay to life.
So, how Klay came to life was the fact that, I think as a mum, I felt I could balance work and my kids. I had a lot of support, my parents, my in-laws, my husband, everyone's really supportive. And I also felt I would be a saner mother if I worked, and I would be a terrible stay-at-home mother. So in some ways, that was part of the reason. I said there are enough women like me who would like to work but would want a 110% for their children, right, in terms of what can be provided, and that's where the idea for Klay came about. In terms of deciding to do it, I think there I owe a lot of that to how my husband Sanjay thought about entrepreneurship. So I've had a little bit of a advantage in the fact that he'd done a couple of ventures, had said, here's what it takes, what is the commercial aspects of starting up, thinking through how to scale a business. And also, while I was working at Emphasis, I'd scaled the business. So operationally, I had the experience. What it meant was really now saying, take the plunge, take the risk and get on with it.
Yeah. You mentioned in a previous interview that you felt that education was sort of the road to emancipation. Do you feel also that education is sort of the road to better financial decisions, particularly for young women and women in India?
Yes, I think, it's very important for people to understand, when, for example, in all our schools, we run a program of financial literacy for our Didis.
That's right? Fantastic.
And the whole thing is about saying, think about what you need to spend on. So what are your daily expenses? What are your weekly expenses? What are your monthly expenses? And then what do you need to save for a rainy day? What ends up happening is with a lot of them, they don't understand the importance of saving. But more importantly, they don't understand where to borrow from. So the rates at which they borrow,
unsecured loans and things like that.
From loan sharks, 21, 22%, they end up paying, interest as against the principal for a very long time. So getting them to understand, this is what you need to demonstrate. We open bank accounts for them, but also getting the bankers to explain to them how they can, build a credit line, take loans when it is important is really critical. So financial education need not be tied with, pure education. It needs to be imparted in a way that, people at different levels and different segments understand.
So you achieved seed funding for Klay and then Series A and Series B as well recently. Yeah. What's your relationship been with investors generally, especially from the lens of a woman?
There are very few women entrepreneurs. So in both the funds that have invested in us, I'm the
At least on the other side of the table, I think in terms of the decision makers.
Even the decision makers as well as companies that they've invested in. One's an education fund and the other one's a consumer fund. The education fund has one more woman entrepreneur, but I think education tends to attract more women in general. The consumer fund, I'm the only woman entrepreneur. So I'm hoping that, over time, what we are doing even at Klay, that there are more women who are enabled through this process who chose to go down the entrepreneurial journey. But the relationship with investors, I don't think that's gender-based at all. Their expectations of you and of the business are the exact same whether you're a woman or a man. And how you respond back is really what defines the relationship. Funnily, I've been in male-oriented industries all my life. So consulting is male-oriented. In Emphasis, I managed a sales organization. That's largely, male-oriented. Though I've played a very active role in making sure that there's, diversity built into my teams, and that gets built over a period of time.
So tell me a little bit about the financial goals for Klay now that you have set out. I mean, there's a recent Crystal report, I think, that's talking about 20% compounded growth for Play School generally as an industry. Do you have a set financial target, or how are you
financial investors, I think you have set financial targets. Given we're a private limited company, I don't think we can talk too much about what those are. But I think at a unit level, making sure that these are, profitable, they make sense in each one of these entities. We're making, enough money for them to sustain themselves is our first goal as we open them up. And then, in general, the industry does about 30-40% at the unit level, and getting there would be our next financial goal.
Have you ever thought about taking it public?
I mean, given we're majority owned by the PE investors, I think they'll take the decision of whether to make it public or a strategic sale or how to grow it. So.
Let me switch to things at home. You told me a little bit about how it was when you were growing up, and I know a little bit about your relationship at home as well. But tell people who are watching what the financial relationship at home is between you and Sanjay.
We consider ourselves very equal in the way we operate. We have one joint account.
And he has an add-on card.
Right now, he's the struggling entrepreneur. So he comes back and he says, "Can I have money
May
for
I have
this?"
some, please?
Yeah, and I think it's been both ways. When I've needed that, I've gone back to him. We've never seen it as, here's a person who's earning and here's the person who needs to ask. But I think it's just prudence, and it also sets the right example for our kids, saying that there's no power center in the household, right? And that mom and dad are equal. And because I have two boys, I want to make sure that, they in turn have the same relationships with the girls that they go out with and, eventually get married to.
Yeah, absolutely. You talked about your boys. What's the key message you want to give them through their growing years about money, about their relationship with money? Because, that's the other odd thing in India. It's very important, but we feel a bit ashamed to talk about it, as if talking about money or saving or spending is vulgar in a sense.
No, I think capitalism is great. We're not a fulfilled country in that sense. We're not even a generation that has enough to now say that, hey, I'm okay and let me not talk about money. And I think capitalism is good also in the sense that it gets the best out of you. You force yourself to make yourself more accountable. I think money is great because it makes me more accountable to these guys. So as far as my boys are concerned, I would say that you must earn and you must earn enough. Be happy at it. And at the same time, do things that you feel good about. Just avarice is not good. I mean, both Sanjay and I work in areas that we're totally passionate about. As long as you're able to marry those, things that you're committed to, things that you're good at, and things that will earn you money. When 2 out of those 3 are fulfilled, I think the third still feels a little unfulfilled. And while I'm making it sound simple, I think if that becomes a life goal, it becomes an easier one to sort of feel happy about.
Thank you so much, Priya, for
Thanks
chatting
so
with us. Thank you.